My name is Millie Perry, I'm 29, and I'm a registered dietitian in Miami. My office was my fortress. But it shattered the moment the door slammed open. Standing there, after 20 years of silence, were my mother, Marie, and my half-brother, Caleb. Marie didn't even say hello. "Millie, you've done well. We need $50,000 today. Caleb's in trouble, and you owe us this for being family." The casual greed took my breath away. Could 20 years of abandonment truly justify a $50,000 demand, or was this the ultimate betrayal? To understand the nerve of that $50,000 demand, you need the backstory. My mother, Marie Grant, wasn't a constant presence suddenly returning, she was a ghost. She walked out when I was 9 years old. Not because of a fight, but because she found a better financial opportunity, Caleb's father. Her farewell was a business transaction, me for a wealthier man. I learned my value early on. That moment defined my childhood, but it didn't break me, thanks to my dad, David Foster. He didn't chase Marie. He focused on me. He worked 2 jobs to ensure stability, trading his time for my security. He was the opposite of Marie, selfless, steady, and present. He taught me that success is earned, not inherited. My foundation was built on his love. So, a mother who traded her child for cash is back. Did she really think she could just walk back into Millie's successful life and demand $50,000? I didn't let abandonment define my future. If Marie could trade me for financial security, I would build my own, non-negotiable security. I finished college, earned my registered dietitian license, and opened my own practice in Miami. Every client's success, every dollar earned, was a step further away from the little girl Marie left behind. My name became my brand. I created a life where I controlled the budget, the environment, and the narrative. My practice was profitable, but more importantly, it was mine. This financial independence was my fortress. No one could walk in and demand a share because they suddenly decided they had a maternal right. I built this security precisely to ward off people like her. Every boundary was premeditated. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Marie left me because I represented poverty and hard work. Now, she was standing in the success I built without her, demanding a piece of it. She assumed that my success meant I had money to spare, ignoring the diligence required. They saw my bank account, but they overlooked the 20 years of effort. Now that Millie's fortress is under attack, will she crumble under the weight of the family guilt, or will the pain of her past abandonment fuel the fight for her independence? For 20 years, Marie's contact was limited to a few brief, cold birthday cards. No personal notes, no apology, just her signature in a generic card wishing a nice day. The minimal effort was almost more painful than complete silence. It was a ritualistic reminder that I was an obligation, not a daughter. I felt profoundly unwanted. Every year, I'd wonder, does she even know what grade I'm in? What my favorite food is? The answer was always a painful, silent no. Her half-hearted gestures solidified the rejection. I learned to suppress the childish hope that one day she would regret leaving. My defense mechanism was to stop needing her. Rejection was my fuel. Millie built her independence on the back of this abandonment. But can she truly turn that pain into strength when Marie is standing right there, demanding the very thing Millie worked so hard for? If Marie was a void, my dad, David, was the anchor. He worked tirelessly, picking up extra shifts just to give me the stability Marie took away. I rarely saw him rest. His lesson wasn't about money, but about sacrifice. He silently showed me that true family means dedication, not convenient absence. He was my stability. Dad encouraged every single interest I had, especially my passion for nutrition. He saw my drive and channeled it into education. He framed college not as an expense, but as an investment in myself. He never pressured me to achieve a certain status, he only asked me to be secure. His support gave me the intellectual armor to face the world. His belief was my shield. I built my career on my father's foundation of unconditional love and earned success. That $50,000 demand was the ultimate disrespect to everything he sacrificed. It solidified my resolution: Marie would never touch what David helped me build. With the memory of her father's sacrifice strengthening her, how will Millie use her professional logic to dismantle her mother's predatory family argument? Every time I felt the sting of Marie's rejection, I channeled it. It became fuel. I decided I would never be in a position where my survival depended on someone else's fickle decision. Hardship wasn't a barrier, it was a workout for my ambition. The long hours, the meager starting salary, they were proof that I was the one who controlled my destiny. I valued my effort over their comfort. I didn't just build a successful practice, I built a reputation for diligence, honesty, and precision. My RD certification wasn't just a license, it was my validation. When Marie and Caleb walked in, demanding money, they were challenging not just my bank account, but my entire, meticulously earned identity. I realized my greatest revenge was simply my success itself. Success was the nonverbal no. Millie's success is her shield, but is it strong enough to withstand Marie's emotional manipulation and the audacity of her demand? I took a breath, letting the 9-year-old hurt settle. Replaced by the calm, analytical RD, Marie looked annoyed by my silence, but I wouldn't let her set the pace. I needed to assess the situation before engaging. Their entitlement radiated like a toxic plume, polluting my sanctuary. My composure was my weapon. Well, I don't have all day, Millie. It's a simple wire transfer. You can afford it. Think of it as deferred payment for your upbringing. Deferred payment for my upbringing? She spent 20 years collecting payment from someone else. The audacity was breathtaking. Caleb shifted his weight, clearly assuming the money was already ours. Their confidence was rooted in the assumption that I would feel family obligation. I felt the betrayal reignite. Marie. Caleb. You are in my private office during business hours. I didn't address the money yet. I addressed the breach of boundary. Lesson 1 in self-defense: reclaim the space and the terms of engagement. I then picked up my notebook and pen, treating them like two difficult, non-compliant clients. The conversation was now going to be on my terms. The control was shifting. Millie just took control of the room. How will she, the registered dietitian, systematically dismantle her mother's claim of deferred payment and use her own success as evidence against them? Oh, my apologies, Dr. Perry. I forgot we needed an appointment. Her tone was haughty, dripping with sarcasm, clearly an attempt to belittle my professional status. The reality, Millie, she continued, is that if I hadn't carried you for 9 months, you wouldn't have this office. Your success is a return on my initial investment. The transactional mindset was sickening. Just pay up, Millie. You have more than enough. Stop being dramatic. This was Caleb's cue, the spoiled, chosen child demanding what he felt was his birthright. I looked at Marie, her face completely void of shame. She genuinely believed she deserved the wealth I earned, purely by virtue of a biological connection she abandoned. The shock turned into clarity. Their combined arrogance was the best gift they could have given me. It wiped away any lingering doubt or guilt. I would not let them monetize my trauma. It was time to return to my RD mindset and dismantle their argument. With the audacity of Marie's investment claim hanging in the air, how will Millie, the master of logic and data, strategically audit her mother's history of absence and present her own final balance sheet? Every primal instinct in my body screamed, run. Hide. Give them the money to make them disappear. This wasn't just a financial request, it was a psychological attack on my years of therapy and self-work. The sight of Marie triggered a panic, dredging up the abandoned 9-year-old girl who still craved her mother's approval. I had to stop the spiral. I forced myself to categorize them, as I would a difficult case study. Marie, classic narcissist, using guilt as leverage. Caleb, enabling victim, lacking personal agency. The $50,000 demand was the symptom, not the disease. I wasn't fighting a mother, I was addressing a pathological pattern of entitlement. Objectivity was my anchor. The silence stretched, filled only by the memory of her leaving. I saw my 9-year-old self waving goodbye, clinging to a father who never wavered. I recalled every birthday without her. I was abandoned when I was a liability, now I was being claimed because I was an asset. That hypocrisy fueled a cold, surgical anger. The claim was void. As a registered dietitian, I build detailed, step-by-step plans for clients to achieve health goals. This was the same. My goal: zero payment, permanent boundary, and emotional closure. My plan had to be factual, unemotional, and irrefutable. I wasn't going to yell, I was going to use documented data and logic, their greatest weakness. This was my nutritional analysis of their toxicity. Millie. Stop writing in that little book. Just say yes or no. She was trying to rush me, knowing emotional people make mistakes. But I had my script. I had the facts. I let the silence sit, letting the weight of their own terrible behavior fill the void. I needed them to know that I was in charge of the clock. The volume, and the final decision. The calm before the storm. Let's begin with your claim of deferred payment for my upbringing, Marie. I've prepared a brief breakdown of our account history over the past 20 years. My voice was level, completely devoid of emotion. They had asked for a transaction, I was giving them an audit. The look on Marie's face was priceless, shock, quickly turning to fury. But it was too late. I had started the clock. The game was on. Millie is about to drop the emotional hammer disguised as a financial report. What devastating facts will she use from their account history to expose Marie's true character and shut down their demand for good? I looked at Caleb, the golden child. The son she chose to nurture and protect with the wealth she acquired. Seeing him there, demanding my money, triggered a primitive, deep-seated resentment. It was the 9-year-old in me screaming, why did he get the mother, the stability, the attention, and I got the abandonment? The injustice was physically crushing. Then I looked at Marie, her impatience overriding any pretense of maternal affection. Her eyes were focused solely on the $50,000, not on the daughter she hadn't seen in 2 decades. The cold realization hit me, she never regretted leaving. My emotional core briefly fractured. My composure, my professional armor, threatened to dissolve. I felt the familiar burn behind my eyes, the urge to scream, to cry, to finally demand, why? But years of therapy taught me that emotional honesty with a narcissist is a weapon they use against you. I could not give them that power. I had to contain the emotional collapse internally. I sealed the 9-year-old back in. The images of my father working 2 jobs flashed through my mind. His exhaustion, his love, his unwavering presence. The $50,000 wasn't just money, it was the value of his sacrifice. To give Marie that money would be to betray my father and invalidate my own struggle. It wasn't my debt to pay, it was their consequence to face. My resolve hardened into steel. The initial emotional tsunami passed. What remained was a cold, sharp certainty. My resentment wasn't a weakness, it was an accurate ledger of injuries. It was the only honest emotional response to 2 decades of neglect and disrespect. I realized I didn't need to yell for them to hear me, I just needed to speak the truth of our financial and emotional separation. The time for analysis was over. The daughter was gone. The professional registered dietitian, the expert in disciplined planning, was in command. I straightened my spine. My internal collapse was complete, giving way to profound, cold resolve. My first word was going to set the tone for the rest of their lives, and mine. I opened the ledger. The daughter's pain has transformed into the professional's cold, calculated fury. What devastating facts will Millie present from her prepared account history to finally settle the score and prove that her success is a non-transferable asset? The single, most powerful word I possessed was no, saying it wasn't just rejecting their demand, it was affirming every sacrifice my father made, every long night I worked, and every tear I suppressed. I realized that yielding to them would not buy peace, it would only invite further invasion. My financial health was tied to my self-respect. The line had to be drawn, now. For 20 years, Marie had been a ghost with the power to wound. Now, she was just a disgruntled client with a ridiculous, baseless claim. I had to strip away the illusion of maternal authority. My past pain was not a blank check. My voice had to be louder, clearer, and far more logical than the 9-year-old's silent cries. Logic would be the antidote to guilt. I activated the registered dietitian in me. I was about to perform a forensic analysis of our family dynamics, dissecting facts from fantasy. My professional life is based on evidence-based practice. Emotional pleas hold zero weight here. I mentally reviewed the key points: Marie's absence, Dad's sole support, and my self-funded success. Data over drama, always. Caleb, staring at his phone, was merely an accessory to Marie's greed. His expectations solidified the sickness of their entitlement. They saw me as a guaranteed safety net, not a person. I had to deny them the satisfaction of making me feel guilty. Caleb would be collateral damage in the necessary destruction of Marie's manipulative system. No room for pity. The biggest battle was already won internally, the fight to accept that they were incapable of love, and that their absence was a reflection of their failure, not my worth. The decision to act was simply the verbalization of this internal truth. I felt a surge of adrenaline, not fear. I was ready to articulate the truth, no matter how harsh. My power was absolute. I was calm, collected, and ready to apply the registered dietitian's greatest skill, disciplined planning. I wouldn't allow tangents, emotional appeals, or diversion. We were sticking to the core issue, the $50,000 demand and the zero ROI, return on investment, of Marie's parenting. I placed my hands flat on the desk, grounding myself. The time for logic was now. Marie was ready to unleash her next volley of entitlement. I beat her to it. My words were precise, cutting through the tense air like a scalpel. I used their language of transaction and investment against them, reversing the emotional blackmail. The tables were about to turn completely. This was my opening statement. Prepare for the audit. Millie is about to deliver a surgical strike of logic against her family's entitlement. What is the first cold, hard, documented fact she will use to expose her mother's zero ROI and begin the final, total takedown? You mentioned deferred payment for my upbringing, Marie. Let's review the ledger. Item 1, direct financial investment. Since age 9, your contribution to my food, housing, education, and medical care is documented as $0. That's a 100% deduction for abandonment costs. Marie's jaw dropped slightly. Marie quickly gathered herself, trying to interrupt. I held up my hand, stopping her. Item 2, emotional investment. Hours spent nurturing, comforting, or teaching basic life skills, $0. We can quantify this by the 2,080 missed hours of maternal bonding, 5 hours per week for 8 years. A conservative therapist's fee for repairing that damage exceeds $50,000. Caleb looked genuinely confused. Item 3, opportunity cost. When Marie chose your father, she transferred her parental obligations to my dad, David Foster. He lost income, opportunities, and personal time. Your request isn't covering your trouble, Caleb, it's covering the consequences of the choice Marie made. Marie started to object, furious. Stop this professional nonsense, Millie. I am your mother. You have no right to talk to me about costs. I gave you life. She fell back on the ultimate narcissist's weapon, the biological claim. Her face was red with fury. But her outburst was a sign of weakness. My logic was landing. I kept my voice level, not rising to her bait. Her desperation was palpable. Item 4, Return on Investment, ROI. Marie, you left me with nothing but emotional debt. The ROI on your investment is negative, while the ROI on my father's investment of time and love is 100%. Therefore, my success is legally and ethically non-transferable to you. The logic was airtight. In conclusion, Marie, you are not owed $50,000. Based on your negative emotional and financial contribution, I estimate that you owe me over $250,000 in damages. I am, however, willing to waive that debt under 2 conditions: that you and Caleb leave this office immediately and permanently, and you never contact me again. The revenge was complete. Millie just flipped the script, demanding $250,000 in emotional damages. Will Marie and Caleb accept this devastating ultimatum and run, or will Marie's desperate narcissism push her to a final, reckless confrontation? I saw the genuine shock on Marie's face, not hurt, but the shock of a strategy failing. She was losing control of the narrative. As a registered dietitian, Marie, I recognize pathological consumption patterns. You have an unsustainable emotional deficiency that you're attempting to compensate for with a financial binge. It's a self-destructive cycle. The label landed hard. You have no right. This is family, not a consultation. Caleb was running out of script. He desperately clung to the family narrative that had always protected him. Caleb, you are enabling this pathology. Your nutritional plan consists solely of consuming the resources of others. Your condition is learned helplessness. Subsidized by Marie's guilt. I had dissected the golden boy. My job is to set clients up for success, and sometimes that means eliminating toxic inputs. The $250,000 damage fee represents the cost of my healing from your neglect. Waiving it is a one-time charitable donation to your survival, not a re-establishment of family bonds. My final prescription for you is a permanent, zero-contact boundary. The word charitable stung Marie. How can you be so cruel? I am your mother. The tears were textbook. Classic, predictable emotional manipulation. If you want to discuss your legal claims, Marie, we can refer this to my attorney. But if you are accepting the waived damages, the transaction is complete. The mother-daughter contract was voided by you 20 years ago. The emotional plea failed. I am giving you 60 seconds to exit this office. Failure to comply will result in a call to building security for trespass, and I will reconsider waiving the $250,000 debt. You came here for money, you will leave with the truth and a legal threat. The threat was concrete and immediate. Marie realized, too late, that she had challenged an unmovable object. The fear of legal action and the debt I manufactured finally broke her resolve. She didn't look back at me. She looked like a desperate client who had been handed a terminal prognosis. Caleb, defeated, pulled his weeping mother out the door. The debt was finally settled. The family contract is officially terminated. But for Millie, is the quiet solitude of her professional success enough to heal the scars of abandonment? Or will the silence of zero contact be another kind of pain? The sound of the door clicking shut was the loudest silence I had ever heard. It wasn't the silence of peace, but the quiet after an explosion. My muscles, coiled tight for 20 years, suddenly released. I hadn't cried during the confrontation, but the tears felt millimeters away now, waiting for permission. The adrenaline was fading fast. I sat down, my legs suddenly weak. My hands were still shaking slightly, but they had won. I had used logic, not tears. I had used facts, not pleas. I had finally defended the 9-year-old girl with the intelligence of the 29-year-old professional. The victory tasted bitter, not sweet. Emotional exhaustion set in. The $250,000 damage claim was theater. A necessary fiction to reverse the power dynamics. But the number wasn't entirely arbitrary. It was a rough estimate of the cumulative cost of therapy, sleepless nights, and the self-doubt she engineered. The cost of the mother she should have been. It was the price of my peace. The number felt tragically honest. The two conditions, never contact me again, were non-negotiable. I knew the moment they walked out, they would try to re-engage through guilt or new schemes. I immediately set up digital blockers, changing emails, building a fortress. My focus wasn't on the revenge itself, but on securing the permanent boundary I had just paid for with decades of pain. The separation was absolute. The office felt too clean, too quiet. The confrontation had purged the toxic elements, but it left a vacuum. I was finally free of Marie, but the truth remained, I was utterly alone in this success. The emotional intensity faded, leaving a hollowness. Winning didn't fill the void, it just sealed it off. The final cost was solitude. But solitude wasn't abandonment this time. It was self-possession. I was the architect of my life, built on my own dedication, and my father's love. The revenge wasn't the end, it was the definitive beginning of my own unburdened life. My next step wasn't about looking back at the wreckage, but about honoring the stability I fought so hard to secure. The future was finally mine. Millie achieved justice, but at the cost of utter solitude. Will her future success be a true source of happiness, or will the void of her mother's absence always cast a long shadow over her hard-won, unburdened life? I could finally breathe. The air in the office felt lighter, as if a decades-old pollutant had been successfully filtered out. The immediate, physical pressure was gone. It wasn't a sudden burst of joy, but the quiet, deep relief of a successful surgery. The tumor of toxic family obligation had been excised. The operation was a success. For so long, the idea of this confrontation, this revenge, had been my motivational fuel. The sweet fantasy of Marie's defeat. But now that it was real, the triumph felt thin, fleeting. It was a temporary emotional high, not a lasting cure. Revenge is a calorie-free, non-nutritive reward. It couldn't replace a mother's love. I thought about Marie's initial investment comment. It was a lie designed to steal credit. The real investment, the 100% ROI, was David Foster. He taught me that stability isn't a given, it's a daily, disciplined choice. My success was his legacy, not Marie's unpaid debt. Dad was the real winner here. Marie's rejection had created a hole, and for years, I tried to fill it with achievements. But the confrontation taught me something essential. My value isn't based on whether she loves me, but on the fact that I chose to love and defend myself. The financial battle was just the physical manifestation of that emotional boundary. Self-defense became self-love. I had been trapped in their story, the abandoned child, the vengeful daughter. Now, the final chapter of that tragic arc was written and closed. I was free to start a new narrative, one centered on creation and connection, not reaction and retaliation. I no longer needed their drama to define my identity. The old script was tossed out. The next few days would be dedicated to practical closure, contacting security, confirming the digital blocks, and filing the account history in my personal safe. This wasn't malice, it was necessary maintenance. True freedom requires vigilance. I wasn't just healed, I was immunized against future toxic inputs. Boundaries are non-negotiable. I looked at the woman in the mirror, not the victim, not the vengeful daughter, but the successful RD who stood her ground. There was a quiet strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She didn't get the mother she deserved, but she became the powerful, disciplined woman she needed to be. My own validation was enough. That feeling of solitude from before? It wasn't the pain of being alone, it was the peace of being alone by choice. It was the silence of not having to manage a crisis engineered by others. I traded the chaos of family drama for the control of my own stable, professional life. This was true sovereignty. My focus shifted immediately to my next client, a new challenge, a problem I could actually solve. No more emotional accounting. The energy I had spent on resentment could now be invested in growth, personal happiness, and genuine connection. It was time to fill that vacuum with purpose. Focusing on the solvable problems. I allowed myself one final, clinical thought about Marie. She would likely never change, she would just find a new victim. My victory wasn't changing her, it was changing me. I broke the generational pattern of emotional dependence. That was the ultimate revenge. I had won the inner battle. If you are facing your own emotional debt collector, remember this, your worth is non-negotiable. Don't pay the ransom with your peace or your money. Use logic, set your price for damages, and then buy your freedom with a permanent boundary. You are the CEO of your life. My revenge story wasn't about Marie losing $50,000. It was about Millie winning her life back, one data point at a time. The debt is paid. The ledger is closed. And my diet plan for the next 20 years is 100% focused on self-care and professional growth. Millie has achieved true freedom by breaking the generational cycle of trauma. But for those of you who have fought and won battles with toxic family, what do you think is the hardest part of a zero-contact life, the silence, or the fear of their inevitable return? Tell me your thoughts below. I knew the silence wouldn't last. A narcissist's withdrawal is never final, it's just a tactical pause before the next attempt. 1 week later, an email slipped through my filter, forwarded from an old account. The subject line? Millie, we need to talk, your father is sick. Classic emotional manipulation. I didn't even flinch. I had already established my position. There was no need for new logic, only firm repetition of the boundary. My reply was concise, professional, and entirely devoid of the emotional fuel she craved. As per our previous discussion, all contact has been permanently terminated. Further attempts will be considered harassment and addressed legally. The logic was the law. Sending the email was the final act of closure. It wasn't an aggressive counterattack, it was simply sweeping up the last piece of debris. I realized that rejecting her demands wasn't just saying no to her, it was saying yes to my own peace. My freedom was no longer contingent on their approval or absence. The revenge was complete and quiet. Millie has bought her freedom with a legal boundary. But what happens when Marie, realizing her daughter is truly unreachable, turns her toxic manipulation outward, potentially dragging other innocent family members into her drama? Setting the boundary was the easy part, holding it was the test. Weeks after the initial email, they tried the phone. An unknown number. I let it ring. I knew that picking up was a guaranteed return to chaos, a retraction of my hard-won freedom. The professional me treated it like a scam call, because that's exactly what it was. No contact means no contact. Then came the flying monkeys, distant relatives Marie activated. A message from an aunt I hadn't seen in a decade, Millie, Marie is heartbroken. Forgiveness is divine. I replied with a screenshot of my earlier legal warning and promptly blocked the sender. My private life was not open for their manipulative negotiation. No guilt trip was strong enough. My professional self was my greatest defense. The registered dietitian who planned meals and analyzed data could also execute a perfect emotional nutrition plan. That plan dictated the elimination of all high-toxicity input, regardless of biological labeling. This wasn't personal, it was strategic self-preservation. Toxicity must be eliminated. There were brief moments of weakness, usually late at night. The old programming whispered, "Did you go too far? Are you truly cruel?" I countered it instantly with the facts from my ledger: $0.00 investment, $2,080 missed hours, and the $250,000 emotional debt. My self-respect was the anchor holding me firm against the emotional tide. Facts over feelings, always. Caleb tried a different angle: LinkedIn. Professional, public. His message was a pathetic plea about family legacy. His entitlement was a disease passed on by Marie. He was just an infected carrier. I didn't block him publicly, but I used the platform's reporting function for harassment. He learned nothing from the audit. I spent a few $100s on consulting with an attorney about a formal cease and desist letter, just in case. I viewed it as an insurance premium. The cost of maintaining freedom is far less than the cost of enduring chaos. This small, recurring effort was the true payment for my lifelong peace. Peace is a managed asset. Dad, they tried calling again. No, I didn't answer. I just wanted to hear your voice. His simple, calm response was the real healing. He never judged my actions, he only confirmed my safety. He was the unconditional yes against the world of no's. His support made the boundary impenetrable. The real family was protected. I understood that Marie and Caleb weren't battling me for the $50,000. They were battling for control. They wanted the satisfaction of knowing they could still destabilize me. My quiet, unwavering response was the ultimate defeat for them. It proved that I had won the inner war long before the office confrontation. Control was non-transferable. The story of Marie and Caleb is over. They are an unmanageable liability that has been legally and emotionally written off. My life is now fully funded by my own self-worth and discipline. There are no more open accounts, no more outstanding debts. Just the clean, focused work of building a genuinely happy life. Millie's freedom is absolute, but what about the fate of Marie and Caleb? Will Marie's unsustainable financial binge finally lead to the collapse she feared? Or will she find a new, unwitting victim to pay her emotional debt? So, what was the real revenge? It wasn't the $250,000 debt I manufactured. The true victory was the realization that my mother and Caleb had zero power over my worth. The power wasn't in the confrontation, it was in the walkaway. It was realizing I didn't need their approval to be successful or happy. The scoreboard was in my heart. My background as an RD taught me disciplined planning. I applied the same principle to my life. You can't nourish yourself on toxic relationships. You have to identify the nutrient-poor, high-drama inputs and cut them out for good. Self-care isn't a bubble bath, it's setting impenetrable boundaries. Boundaries are self-love in action. I want to end by honoring the person who made my victory possible, my father. He showed me that love isn't a contract, it's unconditional support. He paid the real price for my upbringing in time, patience, and unwavering belief. My success is not a rejection of Marie's failure, but a celebration of my father's success as a parent. Thank you, David Foster. If you are stuck in a cycle of toxic family drama, know that you can use your professional skills, your logic, and your self-respect to break free. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You have the power to define your own family, your own peace, and your own future. Choose self-care, choose freedom. The ledger is closed, the emotional debt is settled, and my life plan is in place. Thank you for following my story, from the shame of abandonment to the power of my own professional revenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own stories of breaking free in the comments below. Until next time, be well. The final message is clear: the greatest revenge is a well-lived life. If you've enjoyed watching Millie turn her pain into power, hit that subscribe button. And let me ask you one last question for the community. What professional skill did you use to navigate your toughest personal boundary? Emotional boundaries are important, but legal boundaries are binding. I followed up on my insurance premium, that cease and desist letter. My attorney drafted the document, making it clear that any further contact would be met with swift legal action. It wasn't about being mean, it was about ensuring my peace was backed by the full force of the law. Legal barriers are necessary fortresses. The digital perimeter required maintenance. I changed every old password, set up two-factor authentication on every account, and blocked every known relative or friend who had played flying monkey. My inbox was no longer a platform for emotional attacks or guilt bombs. I treated my digital life like a fortress, zero tolerance for unauthorized entry. The firewall against drama was up. I established a clear protocol with my assistant. Any mail, email, or message containing the names Marie or Caleb was to be immediately deleted and archived without notification to me. This external shield was vital. I delegated the burden of dealing with the debris. It's a core business principle: outsource toxicity. Delegating the emotional labor. I made a personal trip to the building security office. I showed them photos of Marie and Caleb and explained the legal trespass warning. My physical office space was now off-limits, a true sanctuary. I invested in a state of mind where I knew I could walk into work without the constant fear of a surprise ambush. Security is peace of mind. The process of establishing boundaries externally allowed me to focus internally. I invested time and emotion into my real family, my father. We didn't dwell on the past, we celebrated the present. Family isn't determined by blood ties, but by commitment, respect, and mutual love. We were finally whole. True family is chosen. The drama was over. Replaced by a quiet, managed stability. The total isolation of my old life was gone, replaced by intentional, protected connection. I established a new baseline for emotional and professional interaction: high integrity, zero drama. This final resolution wasn't just about cutting ties, it was about building a better self. The system is now optimized. Millie has built her fortress and secured her peace, demonstrating that zero contact is not an end, but a fully funded new beginning. But for those of us who have set these hard boundaries, what's the one unexpected positive change you noticed in your life after you finally secured your professional and emotional sanctuary? They were gone, but their energy wasn't. The office still felt charged, like static electricity before a storm. I walked to the window, needing distance from the space where the battle took place. The silence wasn't a peaceful exhale, but a held breath, the anticipation of the next inevitable wave of manipulation. The room needed an air change. As a professional, I debrief after every major client interaction. I opened the file. Did I stick to the script? Yes. Did I concede any ground? No. I analyzed their weaknesses: Marie's entitlement, Caleb's learned helplessness. The analysis was necessary to prevent the emotional residue from settling in. Logic was the only antiseptic. The $250. 000 wasn't real money, but the cost it represented was heartbreakingly real. The late nights studying, the therapy sessions, the hypervigilance. I tallied the true invoice: 2 decades of lost emotional security. I realized that by claiming the financial debt, I had finally allowed myself to acknowledge the emotional one. The emotional invoice was paid. For 20 years, that final confrontation had been the finish line. The driving force. The moment of justice. But when I closed the folder, there was no euphoria. Just an unsettling quiet where the need for revenge used to live. The fuel was spent, and the engine was stalled. What do you do when your life's greatest mission is suddenly complete? The empty space felt strange. I forced myself to look at my schedule. My actual job. The real reason I had this beautiful, secure office. Not to scheme revenge, but to help people. I needed to re-anchor myself to my professional identity, the one Marie couldn't touch. That identity was built on present facts, not past trauma. Back to the solvable problems. I wrote a short email to my lawyer confirming the necessary legal follow-up. Zero contact wasn't just a threat, it was a commitment to my mental health. It was the definitive nutritional intervention, eliminating the source of constant, high-dose stress hormones. The clarity of the boundary brought a wave of genuine, clinical calm. Clinical calm replaced the chaos. I replayed Marie's final, manipulative attempt at tears. Even in defeat, she was performing. That was the core of her pathology, prioritizing the appearance of love and stability over the reality of it. It was a relief to know I had finally stopped buying tickets to her lifelong one-woman show. The performance was finally over. Caleb was the collateral damage, the one who never had to grow up. He was now facing true accountability for the first time. He would either sink under the weight of his own learned helplessness, or be forced to build his own life from scratch. I didn't wish him malice, only the consequence of his choices. He needed to start his own ledger. The office was empty, but I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by the evidence of my self-worth, my certificates, my books, my successful client files. This solitude wasn't a punishment, it was the ultimate reward. It was the quiet, luxurious space reserved for those who have finally taken control of their narrative. The quiet was earned, not assigned. It's done, Dad. It was clean. I didn't need to detail the drama. He just listened. That was the core lesson. The true purpose of a parent is to provide a safe harbor, not to engineer manipulation. His unwavering support was the capital that truly funded my success and my freedom. Love is safe, not strategic. The energy I once dedicated to resentment now demanded a new investment. I opened a fresh document. My next project wasn't about running from the past, it was about building on the lessons learned. I decided to write a book, Emotional Nutrition: How to Cut Toxic Family Drama from Your Diet. Turning pain into public service. The ultimate audit confirmed the truth. My investment in myself paid off. I didn't get $50. 000, but I gained something priceless, the definitive, unassailable knowledge that I will never again be financially or emotionally compromised. The ledger of my family debt is officially closed. Millie is finally free to live a life fueled by purpose, not pain. But if her mother and brother attempt one final, desperate move, say, contacting her clients, will Millie break her zero-contact rule to protect her professional empire, or will her silence be the final, most devastating move? The contrast between my sterile office and my dad's warm kitchen was stark. This wasn't a battleground, it was a safe harbor. He didn't need to ask for details about the confrontation. His presence alone validated my strength and my right to peace. That evening, he made my favorite meal, a physical anchor to unconditional love. Love is the best nutrition. I'm proud of you, Millie. You handled yourself with dignity. He didn't say, I told you so, or you should have done this sooner. He simply affirmed the process and my character. His pride was the emotional dividend I had been working towards, a far richer reward than any cash settlement. The right words, at the right time. They won't get to ruin one more day, Millie. You closed that chapter. Now, focus on the sequel, the life of Millie, CEO of her own happiness. Sarah had seen the years of anxiety firsthand. Her simple, yet powerful language reframed the entire event. It wasn't a revenge story, it was a corporate restructuring of my personal life, with me as the CEO. Friendship is executive support. I looked around the table. The conversation wasn't about drama or debt, it was about my new book idea and Dad's garden. This was the core realization: I was never truly alone, I just had to prioritize my chosen family over my biological liability. This small circle of respect was the real wealth. Wealth is defined by relationships. Marie taught me to build walls, Dad and Sarah taught me which walls to dismantle. The future wasn't about hypervigilance, it was about selective vulnerability. I could now afford to open my life to healthy connections because the toxic leak had been permanently sealed. This was the true meaning of winning. Sealing the leak, opening the heart. Every great revenge story needs allies. Mine were the architects of my stability. My final advice: don't fight your battles alone. Bring your ledger to the people who truly care, they will co-sign your self-worth. My father and Sarah co-signed my freedom. That support made the difference between justice and destruction. Thank you for your support. Millie's emotional bank account is full, backed by the best co-signers in the world. But now that she's healed, what does she do with all that newfound, powerful energy? Does she finally allow herself to pursue the one thing she put on hold for 20 years, a romantic relationship built on trust, not trauma? The frantic energy that had defined my mornings for 2 decades, the low-level dread, the anticipation of crisis, was gone. My body and mind had finally synchronized to a new, sustainable rhythm. I didn't wake up to react anymore, I woke up to create. The silence felt full, not empty. No more low-level dread. My focus at work was laser-sharp. No more wasting mental cycles on family drama. That reclaimed energy poured directly into client strategies and business growth. I realized toxic family stress isn't just emotionally draining, it's a measurable performance killer. My company's ROI climbed steadily, reflecting my personal stability. ROI reflected inner peace. I rediscovered my old hobby, bonsai. Pruning, shaping, long-term nurturing. It was an analogy for my life. The care I put into those tiny trees, the patience, the precision, was the same care I was finally giving to myself. It was a slow, quiet process, a stark opposite to the explosive drama of my past. Nurturing growth, not drama. For years, the thought of a romantic relationship was terrifying. I was afraid of replicating the trauma. But with the toxic leak sealed, I felt a safe curiosity. I met someone. It wasn't about seeking rescue, it was about sharing a stable, complete life with another stable, complete person. The foundation was trust, not need. Trust built on solid ground. I wasn't just financially secure, I was financially sovereign. Every penny was earned, managed, and invested with my own logic. The ghost of Marie's entitlement no longer haunted my budgeting decisions. I bought a small vacation cabin near my dad's house. It was a purchase funded by discipline, not desperation. Discipline funded the dream. Writing emotional nutrition was the final process of transmuting pain into purpose. I was sharing the toolkit I used, the ledgers, the protocols, the professional detachment. My past wasn't a secret source of shame, it was a public resource for healing. My revenge was no longer personal, it was systemic. Systemic revenge is better. I realized the true measure of my victory wasn't the silence from Marie, but the lack of concern about that silence. I had stopped monitoring the enemy and started investing in my own growth. The drama was irrelevant. The boundary was so complete that their existence or non-existence no longer impacted my daily emotional equilibrium. Irrelevant means winning. The ledger still exists, but now it only tracks professional metrics, client satisfaction, project completion, business expansion. It transitioned from a weapon of defense to a tool of growth. My analytical mind, once consumed by calculating emotional deficits, was now fully optimized for building a profitable, ethical life. The tool is now optimized. I could look back at Marie's desperation with distant, clinical empathy. I saw the fear of a woman whose house of cards was finally collapsing. But empathy is not engagement. I was not obligated to save her from the consequences of her lifelong financial and emotional mismanagement. I simply closed the book. The clinical distance saved me. If you've wondered if revenge is worth it, I'll tell you, the $50,000 was symbolic, but the liberation was literal. The true revenge is the successful, peaceful life that they can no longer touch, taint, or claim credit for. That is the ultimate, non-negotiable win. The quiet life is the greatest flex. My life became a series of intentional choices, not reactions. I invested in new friendships, I traveled, and I finally signed up for that Japanese language course. Every action was a deliberate affirmation of my self-worth. I was no longer defined by the trauma they inflicted, but by the life I chose to build. Choosing life over trauma. My journey from the abandoned daughter to the CEO of my own life is complete. The $250,000 debt ledger is now replaced by a lifetime of freedom and self-respect. Remember, you can audit your family ties. Your peace is a premium asset. Treat it as such. Millie's success is undeniable, proving that self-worth is the ultimate currency. But now that her family trauma is a closed chapter, what happens when her new partner, built on trust and stability, suggests a major life change, like moving to a different continent? Does Millie's new foundation prove strong enough to handle an unpredictable, positive disruption? The cabin, my small sanctuary, wasn't just a financial asset, it was a physical manifestation of my peace. I was sitting with my dad, watching the sun set. There was no hidden agenda, no manipulation, just the quiet, restorative presence of true, uncomplicated connection. This was the luxury I had earned. Uncomplicated connection is true wealth. We looked through some old photos, Marie smiling, Caleb as a child. I didn't feel rage or pain, just clinical detachment. They were characters in a story I had written, audited, and finally filed away. Dad said quietly, "That wasn't your fault, Millie." His simple validation removed the final layer of shame. Shame was finally eradicated. My father wasn't just my biological parent, he was my primary emotional investor. He put in the time and stability that Marie outsourced. I defined parent not by the act of procreation, but by the ongoing commitment to nourishment, security, and integrity. He embodied the ethics I used to run my business. Ethics define the relationship. Sarah arrived, my chosen sister. Our bond was forged not in shared blood, but in shared respect and truth. She had never asked me to be less than I was. She was the stabilizing factor who understood the language of my emotional audit without ever judging the ledger. This felt like the true, healthy sibling relationship I deserved. Respect is stronger than biology. At dinner, we informally wrote a family mission statement based on 3 pillars: truth, support, and zero drama. This was a deliberate counter-programming against the chaos of my youth. We codified our commitment to each other, treating our relationship like the most important project, because it was. Codifying commitment to peace. Days turned into weeks, then months. The silence from Marie and Caleb was absolute. And I realized, the absence of drama is the drama. My life had become boring in the best possible way. The quiet was a powerful confirmation that the walls I built were working. Boring is the new beautiful. The process of auditing my family debt had been more effective than any talk therapy. It provided structure to chaos and objectivity to deep pain. It allowed me to treat the trauma not as a moral failing, but as a business loss that needed to be written off. It was the professional framework that saved the abandoned child. Objectivity saved the day. I wasn't just inheriting my father's genetics, I was inheriting his integrity. The quiet, consistent work ethic that built his life was now the scaffolding for mine. That was the real, priceless inheritance, a model of healthy, sustained self-respect. He taught me that your actions, not your words, are your true legacy. Legacy is in the effort. I forgave Marie and Caleb, not for them, but for me. Forgiveness was simply the final, necessary administrative task to close the ledger entirely. It was a declaration that they no longer occupied valuable mental real estate. My mind was now a clean, calm space, reserved for building, not battling. Mind space is premium real estate. If you've wondered if revenge is worth it, I'll tell you, the $50,000 was symbolic, but the liberation was literal. The true revenge is the successful, peaceful life that they can no longer touch, taint, or claim credit for. That is the ultimate, non-negotiable win. The quiet life is the greatest flex. My life became a series of intentional choices, not reactions. I invested in new friendships, I traveled, and I finally signed up for that Japanese language course. Every action was a deliberate affirmation of my self-worth. I was no longer defined by the trauma they inflicted, but by the life I chose to build. Choosing life over trauma. My journey from the abandoned daughter to the CEO of my own life is complete. The $250,000 debt ledger is now replaced by a lifetime of freedom and self-respect. Remember, you can audit your family ties. Your peace is a premium asset. Treat it as such. Millie has defined her family on her own terms, but this raises a final, crucial question for anyone seeking freedom. If you cut off the source of your greatest pain, what is the new source of motivation that replaces the drive for justice, and is it powerful enough to sustain a truly happy life? For so long, my motivation was fueled by the need for justice, the drive for revenge. When that goal was achieved, a profound silence replaced the roar. I faced the ultimate existential audit: what drives me when I no longer need to fight? The answer wasn't another battle, it was service. Purpose replaced the past. My book wasn't a therapy session, it was a professional blueprint. It took my skills as an RD and applied them to mental health, identify the toxins, set the boundaries, and nourish the true self. That book, born from pain, was now my life's most ethical and profitable product. Pain transmuted into product. My new relationship was the true turning point. It proved that I could be seen, trusted, and loved without the mask of hypercompetence. He wasn't a missing piece, he was an additive, a person who enhanced the whole, stable life I had already built. Love, when healthy, is a multiplier, not a substitute. A multiplier for happiness. He received a job offer, in London. The biggest test of my newfound stability. The old Millie would have panicked, clinging to the familiar, safe office. The new Millie audited the proposal: professional gain, manageable logistics, no emotional liability. I made a decision based purely on growth, not fear. Growth over hypervigilance. Leaving the physical office that had housed my revenge project felt symbolic. It was the safe zone. The bunker. But true independence means you can build that sanctuary anywhere, because the stability is internal, not external. The only thing I needed to pack was my professional mind and my newfound peace. Internal stability is portable. I'm not sharing this story for shock value. I'm sharing it so that someone else, trapped in the emotional red, can see the blueprint for their own escape. Your trauma is not a life sentence, it is data. Use your professional skills to analyze the data, extract the lessons, and build your escape plan. Trauma as actionable data. I took one last look at the corner where Marie cried her final, fake tears. I felt nothing but a cool sense of completion. The chapter was closed. I didn't need to win a battle every day, I just needed to win the war, which was my self-respect and my future. I was finally giving myself the life I deserved. Self-respect is the ultimate win. The ledger, the physical book of debt, was retired. Its balance was zero. The power of zero is immense: zero contact, zero debt, zero emotional obligation. It meant I was starting my life with a truly clean slate, an opportunity that most people never get. My past was simply history. A truly clean slate. Don't confuse patience with passivity. I waited decades, but when I moved with professional, ethical, and legal precision. Your emotional freedom isn't granted, it's audited, negotiated, and demanded. Be the one who closes the ledger. Be the one who walks away with the emotional surplus. Demand your emotional surplus. My story isn't over, it's just leaving the revenge section. The next chapter is called Unconditional Growth. I'm heading to London, to a new continent, a new career phase, and a life built purely on my own ethical terms. This is the true, non-taxable return on my investment in self-worth. The future is fully funded. Millie is heading to London to begin her life of unconditional growth, proving the ultimate victory is peace. But before she steps onto that plane, what one final, profound lesson about family and boundaries does she leave the audience with, the piece of advice that truly changed her trajectory? I know many of you watching are auditing your own family ledgers right now. You feel the conflict, the obligation versus the self-preservation. My greatest lesson, Lesson 1, your family narrative is not your destiny. You have the sovereign right to edit your life story. Grab the pen and start revising the final chapter. Be the editor of your life. Stop treating toxic relationships like moral dilemmas. Treat them like a business audit. Lesson 2, emotional health is a premium asset that demands zero liability. If a relationship consistently results in loss, it must be written off. This isn't cold, it's self-respecting. Use logic to save the self that emotion couldn't. Logic is the best self-defense. You might think victory looks like a dramatic courtroom scene or a massive cash settlement. It doesn't. Lesson 3, the ultimate revenge is your independent, peaceful life built on purpose. My victory wasn't the $50,000 I received, it was the 2 decades of emotional energy I stopped spending on their drama. That's true profit. Peace is the true profit margin. You cannot close a toxic ledger alone. Lesson 4, surround yourself with co-signers of your self-worth. My father and Sarah were the unwavering board of directors who validated my pain and my plan. Find your allies, your chosen family, the people who see your worth and remind you of your strength when you forget. Chosen family co-signs your freedom. Finally, remember that freedom is an active choice. Lesson 5, your silence is not passive, it is the ultimate, non-negotiable boundary. Don't engage in their drama. Just close the door and start building a life so beautiful, they will never be able to touch it. Be the CEO of your peace. The ledger is closed. Go live.